listening to CaveRadioBroadcasting.com. The words and opinions you are about to hear are of the hosts and do not reflect the management of CaveRadioBroadcasting.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole. Today's Thursday, June 22nd, year of our Lord 2017, and you're listening to a Gen Pop Media production. We got a light crew in here today. Traffic is keeping Tony away, but he'll be here in a few minutes. But first of all, I just want to, start by saying what we normally say, that, the whole idea behind the show is to stimulate intelligent debate, to remain courteous, and to really try and figure some of these things out. So we're not pretending to be scholars on any of these subjects. So please don't take anything we say as gospel unless we're actually quoting from the gospel. Do your own research. The whole idea here is that, you may catch a piece of what we say and go, hey, yeah, wow, that kind of makes sense. And it may motivate you to go get your answers on your own. And that's what it's all about. That's how it started for all of us. And our goal here is just to wake as many people up and give them a fighting chance to do what's right, to learn the truth, and to have the opportunity to save their soul, basically. So I'm joined by Kat.
Hi.
How you doing, Kat?
Good. How are you?
I'm okay. We got Chris on the board again this week, and Kenny must be out doing the things that Kenny does. I'm kind of scared to know what all those might be, But like I said, Tony will be here in a few minutes, and we were talking last week about Islam came up, and there's a lot of growing tension between the Islamic community and the non-Islamic community. It's not just Christians, although it seems like they are only Christians are wrong, but but there's we need to learn more because our societies are clashing. We're not isolated like we used to be, and so the only way we're going to be able to get along is to understand Islam a little better, and hopefully while doing that, we're going to understand Christianity a little bit better. Because I know that I can feel Muslim pain. When everybody's answer to me, and when every non-Christian I talk to about Christianity wants to throw at me, Westboro Baptist Church and the Crusades, and all these things that really have nothing to do with Christianity. Mm-hmm. They really, and in the end, none of them changed who Christ was. He is who he said he was.
Right.
And
that's what atheists and Christian objectionists like to do. They like to. It's just like a defense attorney in a case, right? So you have all this evidence. You have all these different pieces of evidence. You might have 50 pieces that point to one conclusion, but the defense attorney focuses on the one piece of evidence that doesn't seem to fit.
Exactly.
And yes.
Exactly. And you can also take liberties. You take liberties. You can really, really stretch it when you're trying to make an argument if your only goal is to deflect truth. Right. But when you're trying to find the truth, it's a completely different operation. Mm-hmm. I always say, and this is one of the things that drives me crazy when I am trying to have a conversation with someone who has different beliefs than I do. And I mean, it's fine. I feel I know I'm right. Okay. But it doesn't mean that everybody else, you're allowed, we're given free will. Okay. And so it's an option for you to do what you want to do, to not believe me, and I mean, it's not me that's talking to you. I'm taking a biblical basis for my arguments and for my beliefs. And, you have the option of saying, Howard's crazy. That's fine. But I don't ridicule you for your beliefs. I'm just trying to offer mine.
Well, I tell my atheist friends that at times there are times where they will engage in the conversation. There are other times where they just don't want to talk about it. And I tell them when they get irritated with me, the minute I stop sharing this with you is the minute I don't love you anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the God honest truth. But I saw I read a disturbing statistic today that since September 11th, 2001, there has been an average of 5 terrorist attacks a day all over the world. And they're saying that...
What was the average before?
You know what? I did not look at that. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But you know, I would have to say it's probably becoming more prevalent. You know, which is also biblical. It says that, you know, as the end draws near, you know, times will become more turbulent. But so I agree 100%. I think it's important for Christians to be able to have an intelligent conversation with a Muslim because, I mean, think about this. Muslims are extremely passionate. Clearly.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And you get them on your team, right? They are just. I
have a ton of respect for because most Muslim people I know are far more devout to their religion. You know, they support and follow their faith way more than most Christians I know.
Yes.
So I have respect for their passion and their dedication.
Mm-hmm.
I would just hate to see it be for naught.
But what I've discovered, and Howard, I know you've been studying this too, is it's really disturbing to me. People sit there and they say, well, what can we do to stop this, right? I mean, we try war, you know, we cut the head off of one monster and 50 other heads grow back. You know, we try embargoes, we try, you know, peace negotiations, all these things, you know, even Katy Perry's calling for just all get along, you know what I mean? But I think what can change the world, honestly, is if the majority of people who consider themselves Muslims actually truly understood their faith and what it truly means and what it's based on. Because I guess I never really thought about this.
And by the same token, I wish that all people who said they were Christian truly understand their faith as well.
Oh, of course, of course, but. And that's what I was kind of about to say is, you know, I never really thought about it until I've been studying this stuff, is Islam is kind of like Catholicism. It's something that you're just born into or being a Jew. Whereas, you know, being a Christian, you know, you have a testimony, you have a story, you have a I came to Christ moment, and this is what opened up my eyes, you know.
Right.
They don't have that. They don't have that kind of, so they don't understand it. They don't even understand what's in their own book. And it's so easy to tear apart. I mean, it is full of contradictions.
Right.
So I think having a conversation about these things is good. And if there's any, you know, Muslims that may happen to be listening and you want to call in, you know, please do.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, we
don't mean any disrespect. We're trying to get to the bottom of this, and trust me, as hard as we look at other religions, we look at ours even harder, because again, for us, it's about finding truth. So it doesn't do me any good if we're both wrong and the Hindus are right.
Right.
Tony D.
What's up, guys?
Hey, man, how was traffic?
Great.
Yeah, it's always wonderful, huh?
Your hair's getting
nice
long.
and cool outside.
It's nice and cool.
Yeah, it is. It is very temperate out there. Can we say the day is moist?
It's
Ugh.
hot.
Hey, well,
moist.
I'm gonna let Kat go here. Looking for a statistic. According to Kat, that terror attacks have increased since September 1st, 2001.
September 11th,
2001.
Since 9/11.
To 5 times a day. Can you find out how many times?
What it said is on average.
On average.
Worldwide?
Worldwide, 5.
Can you find out
on
what that
average.
number was prior to September 11?
Yeah.
Terror attacks worldwide since 9/11.
Prior.
Prior to 9/11.
Because they say 5 a day after.
Average. Yeah. But, you know, the thing in looking at this stuff, the thing that really just hit me, because this is the crux. I mean, if you don't get anything more out of listening to this program today, remember what we're about to discuss right now, because if you understand this one thing and you come across somebody of the Muslim faith and feel compelled to share the Word of God with them, this is absolutely the place to start. And what it says is, hold on, I'm sorry, I need to find it. Okay. The Quran, first of all, the Quran is not equivalent to the Bible. And the reason is because the Muslims literally worship the Quran. There's verses in it that say that it's perfect. It cannot be changed. It cannot be translated. Muslims believe that God speaks Arabic. They believe that that's his language. They believe it's a sin to translate the Quran or to even do any kind of higher textual criticism on the Quran. And so they take it at face value and, refuse to allow it to be negotiated in any way, so to speak. And then you come to find out when you read it in Surah chapter 10, verse 92, it says, "And if thou art in doubt about what's been presented to you, ask those who read the book before you." Ding, ding, ding. What's the book?
The Bible.
Who are those who read the book before him?
That would be the Jews and the Christians, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what their God has done is made the Jews and the Christians the ultimate authority of the Quran, because the Quran points to the Bible as being true. Now, what happens is that Muslims will argue, yes, well, it's been corrupted. But how could that be? Because if the Bible was corrupted at the time the Quran was written, which was
Muhammad says
500, 600 years later.
Right, but Muhammad says in the Quran that you cannot change God's word.
Right. And in the Quran, it says the Bible is God's word.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if the Bible has been corrupted,
how is that possible? If the Bible's been corrupted, then the Quran's corrupt.
Exactly.
So it's just such a circular argument. No matter which way you want to take it, it just goes into a big circle, and it's incredible.
Since what time, though?
I'm sorry.
I guess the question is, if the Bible was corrupted, right?
Right.
That would be between, and I don't know the statistics. Sorry, I missed the beginning part, but from the time of the Bible, the books of the Bible, to the Quran was how many years?
600 and some.
Yeah, 30.
So the claim is that in that 600 years, the Bible was corrupted.
Right. And that's why Muhammad even got the revelation he claimed to have received, was because the Bible was corrupted. But yet the word that was given to him was trust the Bible. And if you have any questions about anything, Muhammad, that I've given to you, ask a Jew or a Christian, and they'll explain it to you. And he even takes it a step further, and in the book it says not to argue with them unless they're observed living unrighteously. Then they, and that goes to follow, right? You're just being a hypocrite. You have no street cred at that point. If you're being a jerk and preaching this stuff, no Muslim should listen to you. Nobody should listen to you at all. So, it's just so powerful. Let's see, what else?
What do you have? What Quran passages that you were reading? What surah?
Yeah, well, so it starts with, we started with Surah chapter 10, verse 92. And the Quran only gives basic facts about Jesus. It doesn't, talk about his character per se. And that's another reason. When, the whole purpose of the Bible is to point people to Jesus. And so the trick is, when you're talking to someone who's a Muslim, is to explain to them how the Bible's not corrupt, while taking the focus off the Bible and pointing it to Jesus, because they acknowledge Jesus. They love Jesus. Jesus was a great prophet. They admit he performed miracles. And a lot of them will tell you that Jesus never died. Yet, Surah chapter 4...
Well, according to them, Jesus was never crucified. It was an imposter crucified in his place.
I don't think... I haven't heard that one. But in the Quran, chapter 4, verse 59, it says, believe on him before his death. So in the Quran, it says that Jesus died in that verse, in 459. And if they have a hard time understanding that, they're supposed to go back to who?
The Bible.
And the people who,
the Christians and the Jews.
And then Surah 355 says, I will raise him up to myself. That sounds like a resurrection to me. I mean, and in their own book, it says that everything written is as is on its face. Basically, it's not up for any kind of interpretation. A lot of Muslims will also argue, Howard, that Jesus was pushed off a cliff. But, because they don't want to, they can't understand how Allah would let his son, be tortured and, let him hang on the cross. But that right there gives us the opportunity to explain to the Muslim the heinous nature of sin, which they're all familiar with as it is, but then to also explain the true meaning between justice and mercy. Because God is perfectly just, people had to pay for their sins, but because he's perfectly merciful, he sent his son to die. And that opens up the door to explain that to a Muslim. And it's hard to argue with, I think.
Well, I mean, it's hard to argue with for us.
Well,
I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who are just dying to argue with us about it.
They should call us. Surah chapter 5, verse 116. The words of the Lord are perfect and no one can change it. This includes the Bible.
Right.
So how can it be
And the
corrupt?
fact that it was written, and it's the fact that Mohammad received his prophecy 600 years after the death of Christ.
Right.
Because we're just going to say death of Christ because we're not going to argue semantics.
Right.
Then the New Testament was in place.
Right. Yeah.
So the New Testament was already in place, so that's already part of the Bible. And the Quran itself says, you want to repeat that?
Which one?
The one about when in doubt, check the Bible.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is. It's so funny. It just, everything comes back. Like every single argument you could ever make when talking, or not argument, but, to explain to a Muslim is, where is it now? Sorry. I got all this stuff in my notes. Where's that? Surah chapter 10, verse 92. And if thou art in doubt about what's been presented to you, ask those who read the book before you. So.
And that book would be?
The Bible.
And those people would be?
The Christians and the Jews. And their book also obligates them to believe in the Old and New Testament. That's in Surah 384. I did not, unfortunately, write that verse down. But, so, I mean, everything, I mean, you could really sit a Muslim down and just logically walk them through. I'm looking for an English translated pocket version of the Quran to carry with me. Seriously, so I can.
I don't know that they actually have pocket versions.
I actually
maybe at motels in the Middle East.
They do. They have
Gideon,
them online.
Gideon make Qurans?
No, they have them online for real, but they're in Arabic. So I'm looking for, if anybody out there knows where to get an English pocket-sized Quran, let me know. So yeah, I mean, and it's just mind-boggling that, this makes me want to run to downtown Dearborn with a loudspeaker and just
Yeah, that's not going to be
stand on the
received well,
corner
babe.
and
I'm just going to say that in advance.
What's that?
That's not going to be received well.
Well, you never know. I'm not the one in charge. God is. If he wants me to do that, it'll happen.
I guess that's true. I guess that's true. You do have a point there.
In another point that if you look at Surah 548, you could actually argue that it sounds like, the Bible, it can't be corrupted because the Quran is the watchdog of it. If you think about it, the Quran keeps the Bible because every time it was written before the Quran, and if you don't understand it,
right, you reference the Bible.
you have to go back to it. And if it was written by Allah and his word is never tainted, that includes the Bible.
Right. Well, and the thing is, they talk about there is something I don't know if you heard about called Sheepgate.
No.
Are you hip to Sheepgate?
No, I'm scared to ask.
Okay, so it is Muslims are typically taught that the Quran has been perfectly preserved, right down to the letter, okay, from the time it was revealed to Mohammad. Yet Islam's most trusted sources are filled with examples of changes to the text of the Quran. For instance, Muslim sources claim that Allah revealed 2 verses in the Quran about breastfeeding adults. The Islamic practice of women breastfeeding men in order to make them their foster sons. Okay, the whole idea of this practice is a woman can't be alone with a man because he may fall in love with her. He may have lustful thoughts. Mm-hmm. So if they allow him to drink their breast milk, then he'll look at them more like a mother and won't have lustful thoughts.
Oh my!
Yeah. So I mean, basically, dropping a boob in a dude's mouth will make him unsexually attracted to you. I can honestly say, not that I'm a Casanova or anything, but I can honestly say that, except for my mother, I've been very fond of anyone whose boob has ever been in my mouth.
Well,
I'm just saying.
I'll have to take your word for
Okay. So neither of these verses are in the Quran today, according to Muslim sources. Aisha, who was wasn't she married when she was 6?
I don't know if that's his 6-year-old wife or not.
that is the 6-year-old bride. He did wait to have sex with her. Muhammad did until she was 9.
Oh well.
So he did wait until she was 9.
That's good.
But according to Muslim sources, Aisha's sheep ate the verses.
Yeah, I actually read that too. At one point.
And basically, what it was that was all in the Quran until Muhammad died. And then after Muhammad's death, the Quran was the Quran was preserved by his wives, and basically they pulled out a few things that they didn't like.
Right. Yeah. So how reliable?
Right, and there is proof in earlier versions that these verses exist.
Right, and you know what I think we should do the second half of the show is let's tear up Christianity in the same way, and then we'll walk through it.
Because like I said, I mean, I am, and that's I think what I don't know, and I don't know that everybody approaches it the same way we do. I know that not even all of us in our circle approach things the same way I do.
Right.
Because I see how we react. Each one of us reacts when challenged. Mm-hmm. Now, when someone like Nick was challenging us for a while, he was asking us questions. He was trying to come to answers. So he was playing devil's advocate and using some circular reasoning and just shoving it back in our face to get us to answer. Mm-hmm. And, what that forces me to do, now it may force some people to go, well, F you. Mm-hmm. You know I'm right. Don't ask me that. You know I'm right. Well, me, what that forces me to do is ask myself, could I be wrong? Mm-hmm. Could I really be wrong?
Exactly. And the Bible says iron sharpens iron, and Nick doing that was a classic case of that. No matter how
no, absolutely, and I'm glad he did it. I'm glad he did it. I hope he found the answers he wanted.
I learned a lot.
I did too.
In having dialect with him.
I managed to, no matter how frustrated I got before I started typing, in either my phone or my computer. I managed to hold it together in those.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but
yeah, we should. We'll do that in the second half, and just a couple more things though about Islam. I don't. A lot of people know that there's a Quran, and you may have heard the term Hadith. Most people have heard the term Sharia law, and the difference between the three of them, or what the three of them are, is the Quran is a divine revelation, and they look at it as the word of God, and that it is the absolute truth. The Hadith, because, the Quran is full of basically laws and principles. What the Hadith are the historical facts of Muhammad's life that were written by, as you said, like different people within his circle. And then
kind of like the New Testament.
Yeah. Sharia law is, Islamic law based on the teachings of the Quran and of Muhammad. And the Quran does not give... what's funny is the Quran says that Jesus performed miracles. This is something you might want to look up, Tony. How many times Jesus is mentioned in the Quran and how many times Muhammad is mentioned in the Quran? Jesus is mentioned a staggering amount of more times, than you would think.
Right.
Being that it's the Quran. But, Jesus did all these miracles. They acknowledged the virgin birth. And yet they acknowledge Muhammad as just a prophet, and it's bizarre. It's just bizarre.
Yeah, and I believe the whole breastfeeding thing was actually from the Hadith. I believe that was not from the Quran.
Yeah.
Explain this statistic here, or this comment.
Okay.
The Christian does not know that in the Holy Quran, Jesus is mentioned by name 5 times more than the number of times the Prophet of Islam is mentioned in the Book of God.
Yeah.
To be exact, 25 times against 5.
So, that's...
So in the Quran, Jesus is mentioned 5 times as many times as you hear.
Their sacred prophet. And again, Muhammad has absolutely... There's no miracles. There's no, nothing supernatural whatsoever surrounding Muhammad in any way, shape, or form. No higher authority per se. No, that's not true. He is given authority to pass this on, which is where the Hadith comes from, in these extracurricular writings. The Hadith reminds me of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. There's so many similarities between Islam and the structure.
I can see
what
it.
I mean?
I can see
how
it.
That all kind
and
of
I'm not and have never been Catholic. I know a good deal about Catholicism, but I don't. I never followed it. It never made sense to me.
Right.
But I just want to close this whole sheepgate thing.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was Aisha's. It turned out that. This was found in 1944. Okay. It was found that these verses were missing, and it was narrated that Aisha said the verse of stoning and breastfeeding an adult 10 times was revealed, and the paper was with me under my pillow. When the messenger of Allah died, we were preoccupied with his death, and a tame sheep came in and ate it. So how ironic that the night before he died, she just decided to take that sheet of paper out of the book and put it under. In Muhammad's death, you realize how Muhammad died, right?
No, I don't remember.
He was poisoned by a Jewish woman.
Oh, interesting.
I am pretty sure that he had declared jihad on her village, and her husband and sons and family members were all killed.
Right.
So she got back by poisoning him.
Oh, wow. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, maybe he should have been more like Daniel. God helped Daniel out a few times, I think.
Yeah.
So you're asking about terrorist activity
prior to 9/11. Yeah.
Okay, it's hard to find.
I can imagine
exact stuff, but terrorist activity increased by 80% in 2014.
Wow. 80%?
80%.
Yikes.
The number of people who have died from terrorist activity has increased ninefold since the year 2000.
Okay. Wow. Well, there you go.
And that's to be fair, to be totally fair. I mean, I think that there's definitely an increase in terrorist activity. Absolutely. And it's because we are no longer separate. The Eastern world is coming into becoming part of the Western world.
But the article, I'm tracking with you, and I do agree with that, because that was my initial thought too. But then the article that I read that said 5 terrorist attacks a day also said that I don't know how many, but a lot of these attacks the international press doesn't pick up.
Oh, right.
So, and that includes group.
So they just treat them like missing children?
I don't, maybe.
This is the problem with when you get into statistics and you get into all these news articles, and we've talked about all this. They take this information and they spin it all. I've got a Huffington Post things up here that says, and you can imagine what the Huffington Post
says. I can only imagine. And I can hear the voice the author speaking in.
Non-Muslims make up the majority of terrorist attacks in the United States. Here's some of the statements. Non-Muslims make up the majority of terrorists in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
What source is that?
This is Huffington Post.
Oh,
and these are
these
are the things that There's two different ends of the spectrum.
Right.
Right. So I guess my question for you guys would be: you're talking about the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about Muslim, Islam, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the definition between the two, for one?
Well, first of all, the Quran is their holy book. Right. That is their guidebook. That's their Bible. Mm-hmm. That outlines the Word of God and how to practice their faith. That is what the Quran is. Okay, just like the Bible for us, for Christians, tells us the Word of God and outlines how we are to practice, how we are supposed to properly practice Christianity.
I would say it's more like the Book of Leviticus. It's not. You can't really. I know what you're saying by saying the Quran is, to Islam what the Bible is to Christianity. It is the authority. You're right. Both of those books are the authority.
Well, there are parables and stuff like that in the Quran.
But
there are stories.
But the Quran is more of, like, the Bible is a collection of, poetry and history and songs and letters and things like that. Whereas, the Quran is more like hardcore, like it's principles, directives.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you live. This is what you do. And you have any questions? Ask the people of the Bible,
mm-hmm.
and they will explain it to you. And then, Muhammad's my prophet. And that's where the Hadith comes from, and so that's basically the.
So hang on, let me ask you a question, because I'm trying to, you've brought up an excellent point, and I stumbled across the same thing, because I've been researching this topic since last week. I again, my only goal is I am not trying to prove myself right.
Right.
I am trying to find what I believe to be true.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the end, it's going to be on the last day that we may never, in this life,
right,
we may never find out who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah. No,
But I need to find something to believe in, and I need some evidence.
Right.
Okay. And I find that evidence in the Bible. And again, I think it is irresponsible to disagree with Islam the way I do on so many of their principles without getting to the source. I mean, not reading the Bible kept me from Christianity for 35 years. Mm-hmm. So if I want to understand what they truly believe, I need to read their book.
Right. Right.
And again, the Bible is my measuring stick.
But you're going to read the Quran, you're saying?
I need to understand more about the Quran. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, isn't it, question for you, isn't it like, and I don't want to minimize the Quran or Islam, okay, but L. Ron Hubbard, right, created a religion.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you really feel you need to read L. Ron Hubbard?
No, because I dismissed that out of hand.
Okay. So you're not dismissing the Quran.
Because I am being told by people that I deem to be good people that Islam is not what I believe Islam is. So the only way to find out if my heart is right, if my eyes are right, or if these people who are of the belief that that Islam is a religion of peace, and that I'm just scared because they're different. I need to find out more about them so I can find out who's right, me or them.
I can understand where you're going with that. That's kind of a logical.
I mean, I don't have anybody around me telling me that Scientology is the way. Right. All I have to do is look at Tom Cruise and be like, not for me.
Well, and the thing is you run into issues like the doctrine of taqiyya, and we've briefly talked about that on this show before. You can't even really go ask a Muslim to explain it to you,
right?
Because
but if you ask a Christian to explain anything in the Bible, they will talk to you for hours.
Right.
Yeah, but you don't necessarily get the correct information from them either.
Right.
But they're not trying to.
But they're not trying to hide anything. We've already established that anything secretive, and this is again why Scientology. I realize you just randomly picked a religion, but this is why Scientology, I know, is not. Well, first of all, it was written by a dude who wrote a science fiction book. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe 2,000 years from now, they can have an intelligent debate on whether Scientology, once Scientology's around for 2,000 years, but written by some B-grade horror comic writer in the 40s, it's not for me. The religion's too young. It's not tested.
Yeah. Well, my personal belief would be that if the Quran is so many years after the Bible, I would go back to prior to that. It's just logical,
right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because anyone after that point can take it and modify it.
But the Jews could make the same argument about the Christians.
Right. The Jews can make
that's true.
Can make the same argument, and they do. I mean, because they don't recognize Christ as the Messiah.
Right. But when I was, what I learned about taqiyya, because I used to think it was that it's just this blanket, you can just lie to the infidel, doctrine in their book. It's a little bit more than that. It started in the Shiite communities, and they were permitted to use it whenever and wherever their Sunni rivals had them outnumbered and were threatening them. But the Sunnis, who are never threatened and have waged jihad against the realm of unbelief, use it to actively deceive anyone. I mean,
And for those who don't realize, we're just talking about two different sects of Islam.
And they were like the Sunnis were, or the Shia were permitted to lie. Or I'm sorry, the Sunnis are permitted to lie when they're forced to choose between recanting Islam or suffering persecution. And what I find fascinating about that is, so their perfectly holy God is saying it's okay to deceive, which is of the devil. The devil is the father of lies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So it's okay to deceive to save your life. What our God says is that there is no greater love than someone who lays their life down for a friend. And he says, I got your back. And if it's my will to call you home out of this world as a martyr, you know what I mean? Then that's going to be my call. Mm-hmm. But we take chances as Christians because we trust in the Lord. We don't have to stand before someone and deny Christ. Christ says, you deny me, I'll deny you, And so I find that just
you're saying, it sounds like what you're saying is if it comes down to someone's going to kill you because of your faith.
Right. Yeah, it's okay to lie.
Yeah, okay. In that instance, just not in general. You lie to...
Right, and basically the Bible says that, take the mark and you can't come in. Right. So it's the same thing. They're saying in the end you will be persecuted and you will have to make you may have to make a choice.
Oh, we've talked about that. It's
to Tony, this is important because what I just gave you is an example, the recanting their faith. Here's a quote from Sami Mukarram, Mukarram. He was a professor of Islamic studies at American University of Beirut. It says, "We can go so far as to say that the practice of taqiyya is mainstream in Islam, and that the few sects not practicing it deviate from the mainstream. Taqiyya is very prevalent in modern politics, especially today." That's written by, a former Muslim dude who is a professor who studies Islam in Beirut. I'm going to trust him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Beirut.
Yeah.
Damn baseball player.
in verse 328, it says, this is in the Quran. It says, "Let believers not take infidels for friends and allies instead of believers." And so whenever you do this, you don't have a relationship with God. So if you're a Muslim and you have a friend that is not a Muslim, then it's like us blaspheming the Holy Spirit, kind of.
Right.
God's not with you
Well,
if you have any friends that aren't Muslims.
see, that's interesting. Okay, the other part that's interesting, you talked about Sunnis and Shiites.
Right.
Okay, when you start talking about the Middle East and who's supporting who and who's good, who's bad, it's all convoluted. You can't figure out anything, right? My question is, as a Muslim, you have Shiites. We'll take the two, Shiites and Sunnis.
Right.
Why are they warring?
Because it goes back to
It's like the
Muhammad.
Baptists and the Catholics.
Well,
It'd be,
Islam started
It's doctrinal.
in Mecca and Medina. Well, yeah, in that regard, it started in Mecca and Medina, and the people in Mecca were opposed to what Mohammad was claiming. Muhammad was claiming he was getting these divine revelations from God, and they were opposed to it. But he did manage to gain a handful of fathers. And Muhammad had an uncle named Abu Talib, and apparently this guy was very prominent. And nobody in Mecca would go after Muhammad because his uncle was protecting him. Well, what happened is his uncle died, so Muhammad fled to Medina. And when he died in 632, a disagreement broke out as to who should succeed him in Islam. And that's where the split comes from. And I can't remember specifically. I think I can't remember which one believes what, but one of them thinks that it should be a relative, of Muhammad that should be the next prophet. And then the others believe, I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up. I'll look it up.
Well, hang on, correct me if I'm wrong, but shouldn't God choose the prophets?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, just saying.
yeah.
Exactly.
The question, when you have these two, you guys brought it up that Muslim was a religion of peace, right?
Yep.
That's what you're being told. Just like this Huffington Post thing, this the writer was Muslim, right? And they're saying that they're tired of being grouped up, which I can understand. That's a logical argument to say, hey, if this person's doing this in the name of Christianity, no, you're not doing it in the name of Christianity, right? But this whole terrorist things that are going on, besides being used by different people for different purposes, right?
Right.
The question would be, if you've got Sunnis and Shiites going after each and all these other sects going after each other, who's right? Who is
None
the?
of them.
Well, that's the question.
It's easy for us, but
If you're the religion of peace, then why would you? Because
Yeah.
Muslims
Yeah,
kill
well, that's-
many
You know what?
Muslims as well.
To your, I think it's more like the Catholics and the Protestants. That's
Yeah.
probably, but yeah.
it's doctrinal. I
Yeah.
mean, it's and like you said, it's doctrinal. And it's a line of succession.
Right.
We got a couple minutes till break, so I want to leave with a couple things. Okay, I was doing some research, and There are a couple apologists. Kat hooked me up with one. We've mentioned Nabil Qureshi on here. He's a favorite of mine. He's a Muslim who converted to Christianity. He was actually a Muslim apologist who tried to convert Christians to Islam until he ran up against a Christian apologist that he could not, that ended up converting him. And it was his college roommate. His name was David. Well, it turns out David is David Wood, who is a Christian apologist. And he has basically devoted the rest of his career to, deciphering, debunking Islam. And I've been watching a lot of him as I've been researching this. And I tripped across another Christian apologist who also is devoted himself to Islam, a guy by the name of Robert Spencer.
I haven't heard
Okay.
of him.
Well, I was listening to Robert Spencer today, and and a little bit on YouTube, and I read an article. And he came up with a very interesting article, and I do not have the facts to substantiate it because I don't remember them, but he did present them in the video. Now, if anybody wants to look it up, it's basically Robert Spencer, and he talks about the origin of Islamophobia. Okay? And according to Robert Spencer, and he had facts to back it up, which I do not. I'm making myself clear. Islamophobia was developed in a Muslim think tank so that label would be used to stigmatize and shame anybody who had the slightest disagreement with Islam.
Wow.
So Islamophobia was not born in the United States, as we were electing Trump. Islamophobia was
still
actually
Trump's fault.
Yeah, Islamophobia was actually born in the Middle East.
Uh-huh. Well, if you go back to Hooper's, all the stuff that we were talking about with Hooper and all the things that these are all techniques to control and
absolutely, it's all about control. So and don't get us wrong, okay? It's not the backward society that many people would lead you to believe it is. These men are just as intelligent as we are. There are just as many intelligent. We're not saying that. So to think that they don't have a bunch of guys sitting around that are smarter than everybody else trying to figure out how to trick us into buying what they're selling. You're crazy. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole. Our buddy Chris did some hard work while we were on break. We made him work while we were taking a break. So he found that video for me, and I'm just going to have him play it so you guys can hear what I heard, and then we can talk about that for a second. And then we are going to take the opposite approach and try to rip apart Christianity the way and come up with the questions that we're coming up with on Islam. So this is Robert Spencer.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. Somebody keeps
While he's doing that,
no, we're good.
Oh,
Somebody
okay,
just
go.
keeps turning this off.
I'm often accused of being Islamophobic, as are many who call attention to the reality of jihad terror. In George Orwell's Nightmare of a Totalitarian Future, the novel 1984, a secret police monitors citizens for so-called thought crimes against the totalitarian state. A thought crime is an idea or an attitude the totalitarian rulers deem to be politically incorrect. Islamophobia, which is generally understood to be an irrational or pathological hatred of Muslims or Islam, is the name that has been given to a modern-day thought crime, and a global movement is promoting its incorporation into law today. In the term Islamophobia, the purpose of the suffix is to suggest that any fear or phobia associated with Islam, for example, the calls of its prophet or its current-day imams to kill infidels, or the attacks of 9/11 which implemented those calls, is simply irrational. And worse, Islamophobia is a response to those attacks that reflects a bigotry that itself should be feared. That's the idea. Islam, however, is different from Christianity, Hinduism, Judaism, and most other faiths in that it is a political religion. Muslims recognize no separation between religion and state, and in the canonical texts and teachings of Islam, Islam regards all other religions and non-religions as infidel creeds. Moreover, Islam aspires to establish a global Islamic state, a caliphate, that would impose Islamic law on individuals everywhere and criminalize heretical thoughts. And that's where Islamophobia comes in. Abdurrahman Mohammad is a former member of the International Institute of Islamic Thought. He was present when the word Islamophobia was created, but he now characterizes the whole concept of Islamophobia this way. He says, this loathsome term is nothing more than a thought-terminating cliché conceived in the bowels of Muslim think tanks for the purpose of beating down critics. In short, in its very origins, Islamophobia was a term designed as a weapon to stigmatize and silence anyone who opposed jihad terror. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or OIC, which is 56 Muslim governments worldwide and the Palestinian Authority, began a campaign against Islamophobia in 2008. The OIC declared its intention to craft a legal instrument to fight against the threat to Islam from what they said were political cartoonists and bigots. Of course, they were referring to the Danish cartoons of Mohammad that appeared in 2005, touching off international riots and killings by Muslims worldwide, the burning of embassies, the murder of non-Muslims, including a Catholic nun. Ekmeladin Ihsanolu, the Secretary General of the OIC at that time, said Muslims are being targeted by a campaign of defamation, denigration, stereotyping, intolerance, and discrimination. Note that he was talking about the cartoons of Muhammad, not the people who were killed over the cartoons of Muhammad. Ihsanolu went on to say, Islamophobia cannot be dealt with only through cultural activities, but through a robust political engagement. That engagement would be directed toward restricting the freedom of speech. Abdoulaye Wade, president of Senegal at that time and the OIC chairman, explained it this way. He said, I don't think freedom of expression should mean freedom from blasphemy. There can be no freedom without limits. In July 2008, in a briefing on Capitol Hill, Pakistani embassy representative Asma Fatima defended the Muslim outrage as necessary and called for restrictions on speech that insulted Islam. She said, the ideal of freedom of speech is precious to you, but it's not value neutral. You don't have to hurt people's sentiments and bring them to the point where they have to react in strange ways. This is the ultimate goal of charges of Islamophobia: to stigmatize, demonize, marginalize, and ultimately criminalize criticism of Islam, such that jihad terror activities can continue unimpeded and unopposed. The charge of Islamophobia is a valuable tool the allies and supporters of jihad terrorists have to silence the foes of jihad terror. For more information, go to this website.
So those were the cited sources
Wow.
for what we were talking about before the break.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, it's funny because the Bible says that the two greatest commands that God gave us, the first being love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and body, and the second being to love each other the way God loved us, which again means we would lay our life, or he laid his life down for us, and we should do that for others. And that doesn't mean just, you know, like letting yourself die. I mean, it means, you know, sharing your time, sharing your money if somebody needs help. And Muhammad's greatest command was first, believe in Allah, and second, participate in jihad, where a man's blood is spilled and his horse is injured. And how we are calling this a religion of peace, I'm not so sure. A lot of people...
Where are the animal rights people?
I don't know.
You know,
Right.
I mean, because they're, they're not just talking about Christians. They're talking about horses, too. You know.
Well, and, you know, it's funny because the people, you know, always point to the Old Testament. You know, oh,
Yeah.
look at the violence in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The verses of violence in the Quran are open-ended. They're completely open-ended, meaning they're not necessarily restrained by historical context contained in the surrounding text, the way the violence of the Old
Right.
Testament is. You know, there
The
was some context,
violence
there
of
was
the
a
Old
reason.
Testament, though, was in what context?
Well, most of the time you find, okay, so you find God ordering the destruction of a society.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go back and you look at what secular historians will tell you about these particular ancient societies, I mean, these are the kind of societies the United States would invade a country to stop, these kind of people from the treatment of their own people. I mean, for example, I saw a special where an archaeologist said that the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, one of the things that they used to do is when people were traveling by the city, they had guys stationed at the gate, right? Those guys would run out and capture a person walking by, okay? And they would take them into the town square, put them in a cage, and string them up in the middle of the town square and just let them die for everybody's viewing pleasure. I mean, we're talking just twisted, abhorrent, sick, nothing that we would tolerate today going on in any society. And again, it was always in context. And we also see God punishing the Jews. But the punishment, the punishment seems a lot more severe. But come on, they had the voice of God in their head. I mean, he was there. He was performing all these, he parted the Red Sea. What more proof do you need?
Yeah, pretty much.
He parted the Red Sea, and you're still going to step out of line,
If he parted traffic on 96,
right?
For me to get here, there'd be no, doubt left.
I mean, the punishment.
I would be so thankful.
Yeah, the punishment's more severe because they were so much more. I mean, the evidence of him was like in their face. I mean, manna from heaven, right?
I guess I'm looking at it a little bit differently. The more and more I study it, okay, and the things that seem to find is just like we've talked about on ever talked about on the show is DNA. You talked about spirits. You talk about things going on other than outward appearance. It wasn't just because this person lives in a different town. You don't go in there and kill that town because you don't like the town.
Right.
There's a reasoning that God had in order to do that.
Well, we know that part of what God wants. We don't know why. Mm-hmm. But we know that it's a big deal to God to contaminate DNA. Mm-hmm. We know that the flood was about the commingling of otherworldly DNA. About the fallen ones,
fallen angels,
about the giants, taking human wives, and according to if you look back at a lot of those ites, bites, and mites that were supposedly wiped out by Moses, by the Jews, by God, by whoever back there in the Old Testament, if you dig deep enough, there's reasons, and again, it's because these societies were doing the same kind of thing. They were messing with demons. They were messing with fallen angels. Their DNA was contaminated.
Mm-hmm. And if you believe, you go back to people we've talked about on the show, Steve Quayle, Derek Prince, these guys, when they're talking about contaminated DNA, you're talking about fallen angels and blah, blah, blah. It actually gets into, this is the reason, there's a war going on.
Yeah.
And that's literally, there is a war going on between two kingdoms. Kingdom of Satan, kingdom of God. So,
good versus evil is real,
right? And you're seeing that, and all this other stuff to me, personally, just seems to be playing out for like that video. This Islamophobia. That's just a technique to be used to divide people.
Absolutely,
to create a situation.
Yep.
And they keep trying to push it. It's like, I don't know if you guys have been following what's going on in England right now, but if you say anything about Islam, that's hate speech. They're going after anyone that's on YouTube, the Paul Joseph Watsons.
Who's going after?
The British government. The British government
is going after Muslim hate speech.
Absolutely, without a doubt. You look at Minneapolis. There's something going on in Minneapolis that popped up on my radar on this as I've been researching the subject for the last week, and they're basically Minneapolis in the United States has a way higher percentage of these terror incidents. Okay, incidents involving that that show up on the terror radar. You know, we're talking, you know, terrorists versus non-terrorists. I don't want to say Muslims versus Christians, because it's not. It's terrorists versus the public at large.
It's Islam versus everyone else.
But I mean, I can't even. Well, I mean, you know, I guess if they're Islamic terrorists, and there's a huge Muslim community in Minneapolis. Okay, and so what do? Do they set up a tip line to talk about potential? You know, wow, you know, this guy's been talking some guff. You know, do they set up a tip line like that? No, because that would be insensitive. They set up a tip line where Muslims can report non-Muslims who are speaking out against Islam. Mm-hmm. So they set up a tip line not to deal with the issue they're having, to where the integration of, what else can I say, but Muslims into their community, they're having a problem with that. And instead of setting up a tip line to try and address that, to even be fair and impartial. Now, what they've done is they've set up a tip line so that the newcomers, the ones that are bringing the difference in ideology and way of life and law into the community, are able to talk about the people who have lived there for a couple hundred years, and are being insensitive to their political views, which they don't agree with. So I mean, that sounds like it's running a gamut. I mean, it's First Amendment. It's
Well, here's your backup for it. Okay, this is when you type in Minnesota terrorism. Minnesota leads the U.S. in recruiting ISIL terrorists. It talks about the FBI probing, getting all these different.
They picked one of the coldest states.
Well, yeah, because it's like, man,
Here's the interesting one.
I got to kill Christians. That's great. Just get me out of Minnesota.
What's going on?
There's a reason why Cornell said "feel in Minnesota."
Desert,
you know,
one of the coldest states in the U.S. Anyways,
this article here, third one down, U.S. government breeding terrorists in Minnesota. Okay, that kind of goes along with what you're saying.
Yeah.
What's going on in Britain and all these things that are going on. If you step back and say, are these people being used? And you look at how it's being done here, how it's being done in Europe. You know, for the EU to make a mandate that each country has to take in so many migrants.
Yeah.
Why? Okay.
tolerance.
Well, this is just not logical.
You know,
all these things they're doing is just not logical.
Tolerance used to be, and I'm certain, you know, this is how it was when you guys were growing up. Remember when tolerance was, you know, where we disagreed with each other about important issues but still respected each other?
Yeah.
You know, now it's recognizing and embracing all views equally, unless you're white or you're a Christian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
That's it.
Or male.
That's tolerance. Yeah.
You got to lump us in with it.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, you know, if you're going to go to war in the U.S. or in Europe, you have a majority in those areas are whites and Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Not
right?
so much in Europe anymore.
Yeah. Well, because they've had years and years of systematic bringing people in and changing that, right? And they're trying to do that here.
Yeah, they'd like to, yeah.
So they need to divide. They need to villainize white Christians if you're going to have a fair chance of breaking that up. If you were going to go to war and take that over, that's what you would do. That's why it's so interesting when someone wrote on Facebook the other day. I responded back to, it was their birthday. I wrote happy birthday, you know, like, oh, you're finally talking about something other than politics. It's like, you know, I never talked about politics before. And it wasn't until you started figuring out that there's something going on and somebody needs to start paying attention. And this, what you're talking about here with the Muslim faith, and those people, in my opinion, are being used for a purpose, right? Because let's face it, if you're gonna go kill somebody because of religion, there's no place for you here. There's going to be a war, right?
Yeah.
So, and to me, if you want, I don't say what religion's right. I'm trying to study myself. I'm trying to learn myself, just like we've been saying. But if you're using your religion to go out and kill somebody.
Right.
That's
I really
there's
have
no basis for that.
I have no problem with anybody's religion unless it instructs them to kill me because I have mine.
Right.
You know, I mean, do what you got to do. And at the end of the day, you are responsible for you and yours.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure my family and my friends are on the right track. That's
Right.
all.
That's right.
You know, and until I find something that makes more sense to me than the Bible, which I doubt will ever happen, this is what I'm going to do.
Unless you go back in a time machine, right?
Maybe go back to
Let's see-
600.
No, and I think you talked about, this for this session, this after second session here is we're going to talk about bashing Christianity.
Yeah.
Okay? My question is, I haven't found it, but in the New Testament, we kind of talked about going and killing these people, men, women, children,
Well, that's
everything,
not New
right?
Testament,
That's not in the
though.
New
Or, excuse me, the Old Testament. I'm sorry. Back in the Old Testament, this is what it said, and there was, and that's explained by like these Derek Prince and these other people, Steve Quayles and Tom Horns and all these people are trying to explain it for a certain reason. Is there anything in the Old Testament or New Testament that says kill somebody if they don't believe in Christianity?
No, nothing. No.
No.
Nope.
No, you're just
Not
supposed to
even
keep
close.
spreading the gospel with them until, and let them make their own choice.
Mm-hmm.
There is no convert or die
There's
message
none.
in Christianity.
So my
I
point.
mean, in the sense that like you're charged to go out and convert people. The only thing even close to that is when the very last thing that Jesus said before he ascended into heaven was go and make disciples of the nations.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look back to other passages that carry that same charge, you always find that directive followed with and speak the truth in love.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Be filled with the fruit of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like he knew that people had bad in them.
Well, of course he did.
And there's
Right?
there's another thing. There's another thing too that I want to
Things you
bring
need to
up.
control is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And this goes towards your the violence in the Old Testament. Okay, it was a time we don't understand. It was a totally different time on this planet. We can pretend all we want. We have no understanding of it. Okay, and then you talk about all the rules in Leviticus. You talk about how God was an angry God and a jealous God, and all the things that were done in the name of God, which is what whenever someone wants to shut you up when you're trying to talk to them about Christ, it's always something in the Old Testament that they have issue with.
Right.
Nobody's going to be walking up, he fed the multitude with fish, and I think that was harmful to fish,
He
so
said,
I
"Turn the other
can't.
cheek,"
So
he
I
said.
totally cannot follow Christ. It's always going to be something in the Old Testament because I know for me it was. Oh, what kind of loving God would? And it's because I never. First of all, you have to read it in context. You have to read the entire chapter and book so that you understand why those things were to happen. But here's the difference: why you cannot compare the Bible to the Quran. Okay, if you look at Hebrews 8 verse 13, okay, what people don't understand is that the Old Testament operates under the covenant between God and Moses. Okay, it's the rules given by God to Moses, and after 1,400 years, I don't know, after quite a long time, it became obvious that no one was going to be able to operate under those laws, okay? And so that is when God sent Christ to bring us the new covenant. And everybody can talk in this day and age to be harping on something that happened thousands of years ago in the Old Testament is a little ridiculous, okay? And the other thing is from the Bible, Hebrews 8, verse 13, when God speaks of a new covenant, he makes the first one obsolete. And whatever is becoming obsolete, out of use, annulled, and growing old is ready to disappear. So the Old Testament argument is moot.
Right.
Because the Old Covenant no longer applies. It's not about the Old Covenant. It's about Christ and his love.
Right. Yep. That's a great
And this
point.
this is one of the things that I have totally found out since I have bothered to look into this and to find truth for myself. And that's what so many people don't get. You know, they use all these arguments in the Old Testament as their reason for not being willing to consider who Christ is, who's absolutely predicted through it. The only reason the Old Testament is still in the Bible is to predict the coming of Christ with 100% accuracy. Otherwise, it wouldn't even be there.
Well, there's history. It's like,
But I'm saying there's history, but basically all it's there for, you know, it's like, yeah, there's parables, there's lessons. I mean, you know, Psalms and Song of Solomon, Proverbs. I mean, there's a lot of important things in the Old Testament, but you could completely get rid of the Old Testament if you are willing to believe that Jesus Christ was the Son of God and just live by the New Testament, and you are saved and can go to heaven.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
you know, I don't know if I totally buy that.
Why wouldn't you?
Well, I'm not saying that. I just don't think you need to get rid of it, for one. Okay,
But I'm just saying you could completely ignore the Old Testament.
Let's say you did that. Okay, let's say a person were to ignore that. You're basically, if they could go by faith and say they know that's real and they can live the right way. Because the way I see it, it's kind of like when you have kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Ten Commandments didn't happen the first day.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
No.
Life was going on. People were doing things, and you know, it's like
Yep.
all of a sudden, you know, and I think Moses come down with 10 Commandments, and all the people were all doing dumb stuff, like we've said before.
Well, the Ten
And he
Commandments
broke-
also came
and he
down
broke the
after
commandments.
sorry to interrupt you, but the Ten Commandments were also handed down after God delivered his people from Egypt.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So he took them out of slavery and was like, look, you guys have messed up at every turn. You've blasphemed, you've denied me, you've had false idols. Now I have brought you back, and I'm going to take you to the Holy Land. You are my chosen people. You are the descendants of Joshua, the descendants of Abraham. Here's what you have to do to stop from pissing me off.
Yeah, it's how to live, right? This is how you should live.
What was your question?
Well, I was saying it's like with children. You know, they go out and they do their own thing. They screw up. You bring them back.
That's exactly it. And
That's kind of the same.
Yeah.
Here's the thing too about the Levitical law and the Ten Commandments, particularly the Ten Commandments. First of all, I find them very believable or the whole story believable, because Moses went up on that mountain by himself, and he's a guy, and he came down and talked about infidelity. If the average guy went up on a mountain and got directives from God, don't you think it would look like the way every freaky cult that has come since then would look like? Everybody has to have sex with me because I'm the guy that God picked. And that's David Koresh. That's all those, nutty people, Jim Jones, drinking the Kool-Aid people, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. But in society, there's like family rules, and then there's another set of rules, like, say, the rules that a country club has, okay? Now, when you decide you want to join a country club, you go there, right? And you do whatever, pay money, whatever. You sign a piece of paper. They hand you the rules. They say, these are the rules of the club, okay? If you break any of these rules, you're out. You're out of the club. We're going to pull your member. You're out, okay? Whereas the family model of rules, like when you and your ex-wife or when you guys had your first child, when you found out she was pregnant, did you sit down and get out a piece of paper and go, okay, here's the rules for that little SOB. This is exactly what's going to go down. No.
Right.
You had the kid. You welcomed the kid into your world, and you gave them the rules as they could understand them. You revealed more and more as they grew, as they could understand them. And if you look at how the very first commandment starts, it says, I am the Lord your God who, And now I would imagine that the people back then may have went, well, now wait a minute, you're our God, just like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't have to do anything. We don't have to like sign any paperwork or do. We just like that. We become your children, and God says, yeah, that's it. And so you might break the rules, and that's another reason why I think He gave us the 10 Commandments. See this? This is my character. I'm perfect. I'm perfectly just, perfectly holy, perfectly righteous. These are reflective of my character. You can tell a lot about a person by the rules that they give you, right? Well, that's another reason to reveal more of His character to us, that He gave us those rules. But then if you take it even further, it was a way to also say, and you will never measure up to this. Not as long as you're full of sin, walking around in this world that Satan is in control of. You need my Son. And because I am full of mercy and love, here you go. All I require is that you believe. And Jesus came to fulfill all of that, which, like Howard said, makes that null and void. It's I mean, not null and void. That's a bad way to put it. But it's no longer applicable. And so we can learn a lot about
kind of like
character.
Christian affirmative action.
Yeah. We can learn a lot about God's character, but the Psalms, are so encouraging. The stories are amazing.
Proverbs are incredible.
Yeah,
Solomon
Proverbs, the
was
wisdom that comes from Proverbs and Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
Very valuable, But
But as far as rules and the killing and all that stuff, and just to close on that, I'll read 2 Corinthians 3, verse 9. For if the ministry that brings condemnation, and they're talking about the old covenant, the law, has glory, how much more does glory overflow in the ministry that brings righteousness, the new covenant, which declares believers free of guilt and sets them apart for God's special purpose.
Amen.
Let me ask you a question to get back to run through my mind what we originally started talking about.
Sure.
The Old Testament. Okay. A new religion would be kind of like the New Testament.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you don't go back to the history, you know how things change over hundreds and hundreds of years. You don't know the original story. If you don't, my opinion is why that Old Testament is important is because that's, and even other books of the Bible that aren't included, is that you have to go back to the original to find out why. There's you just
the history.
You tell somebody, oh, there's good versus evil.
Right.
Well, they don't really believe that. And you can read it, the New Testament, and everybody, get along and feel good, but they don't know the real story of how it originated and what really.
True.
I'm going back and I'm reading, where they talk about, and I told you before, they put a sacrifice out for the Lord, and it vaporizes. It's just gone, right? Anyone that goes to the Lord, they need an intermediary. Thank you.
That's a tough one.
My mouth is just not working today.
Maybe you'd have a better time with condemnation.
Yeah, I was going back to we talked about Moses when they had I'm going over this Constitution course, Hillsdale online. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
No, not the course, but Hillsdale.
It's pretty neat, but they talk about in the one lesson they talk about statue of David, statue of Moses, the different statues, and they relate them to what they're important for. But the statue of Moses had horns on his head. Okay.
Where is the statue at?
It's in Rome.
Oh.
I think it's Michelangelo's
I
statue.
believe so, yeah.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Well, there's horns on Moses' head. So I'm thinking, like, why would they have horns on his head? So I go back and I do some studying about that. And interesting, they said that through the translation, when you were horned, it was your face was red. Okay? And so they basically said when Moses spoke with God,
The glory of God on his face.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Game of
So
sunburn.
it wasn't the horns like I'm thinking, devil horns.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's interesting how that happened. So that goes back to, once again, you start thinking about there's something more to this Bible than just, hey, everyone needs to get along. There's stories, there's history, and there's things that you don't know, you're not going to understand, maybe until the end day, right?
Right.
So that's why it's important. That's why, and you start talking about.
Well, I'm not trying to diminish. I don't want to in any way to try to make you think I'm diminishing the importance.
Yeah.
Of
I
the
just
Old
think
Testament. I'm just saying that it has been my experience that everybody who wants to pretend that they know something about the Bible yet are not a Christ follower, that when they want to argue with me about who Christ is or Christianity, the concept behind Christianity in general. See, again, that's another misconception, okay? The religion of the Old Testament is Judaism. Christ was a Jew. It is those people who follow his teachings that became Christians, the disciples. Christ was born a Jew, died a Jew. Yet, they want to use the Old Testament, Jewish in nature, to as the reason why they won't follow Christ. You see what I'm saying? I find it that it happens very often that people with a limited knowledge of the Bible, they know just enough about the Bible to argue with you about it. And it's always something in the Old Testament that they're using to demonstrate how Christ is not who he says he is. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from. I'm not saying...
Well, I don't know that part. So I guess my question is, you go to the old, when Jesus was a man who was prophesized.
Yeah.
Right? We've already talked about that. He was prophesized. He came in riding a donkey on a certain day.
On the day he was supposed to.
All those things.
Thousands of people.
So here's a guy that we know is a real person, right?
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt, he's a real person, and he's talking about the disciples and adding to, which kind of follows in my mind, only in my mind. I don't know if it follows in your mind, but kind of the same thing where you're taking somebody and saying, "Hey, look, this is how you're supposed to live. This is what you're supposed to do," and he wasn't necessarily a good guy.
Who?
Jesus.
I
mean, as far as I won't say he was a nice guy.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He'd come in there and he was
full of indignation when he needed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was against the tax folks, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, he wasn't. You know what?
He was
wasn't
against the merchants.
He was just against the He's like he could care less. I mean, they said, teacher, should we pay taxes? What did he say? Whose image is on that coin?
Yeah,
Caesar's. He's like, well, then give it to him. It belongs
give
to him.
Caesar his due.
But
Right.
give to God what belongs to God. And I would imagine if they would have asked them another question, well, how do we know it belongs to God? He would have said, whose image is on you?
So I guess my question to you just said, if you follow one, you're not following Jesus. Is that because it's corrupted? Why do you think that is?
What do you mean?
Well,
No. What I'm saying, maybe you're not understanding what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that when people want to argue with me that Jesus is not who he says he is, they are trying.
Or that God's not real.
Or that God's not real.
Or that Christianity sucks.
They are always referring to the Old Testament, which has nothing to do. All the Old Testament does is in reference to Christianity. It prophesies about Christ.
Right. And well, it does a lot of different things, but I guess what is the argument against Jesus?
Oh, there's tons of arguments that the disciples were wrong about his death.
Do you believe he died and came back to life?
About the resurrection? Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
That one's hard to...
That they were delusional, that they were fooled by an imposter, they were influenced by limited spiritual sightings.
That was actually my sticking point. I had to research the resurrection before I could fully accept and become saved.
And I have not studied that in depth in that, okay? But if there is a point that, you could say, well, this is not real. We're taking for faith that he actually died, and he actually was resurrected.
No, you don't need to. You don't need to take it on faith. You can go.
There's
You can go
enough
get
evidence.
secular historical records to prove it.
Right. There's outside writings.
See, that's
there's-
the thing about the resurrection, is there is probably 10 times the amount of corroborative evidence made, an eyewitness testimony made by people who had nothing to gain from the resurrection being true.
And Tony, if you look at the claims that Christ made, or the claims that are in the New Testament, and you look at any other claim made about any other historical figure that you trust in, right? I mean, do you believe Julius Caesar was a real person?
Yeah.
Do you believe he was
Okay.
the emperor of Rome?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because
And-
there's historical documents
But
on
did
that.
you know that there's about 5,000 more historical documents about Jesus than there is about the emperor of his day?
And the
No, I did
definitive
not know.
and the definitive work on Julius Caesar was written by Julius Caesar, written by his best friend.
Actually,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
it was written by
I
Tacitus.
guess my thing would
Yeah.
be, I'm trying to play a little bit of devil's advocate
No, it's
here,
fine.
right?
Yeah.
Is that this is the argument you hear is, well, how do you know he died? Right?
Well,
That's
okay,
a
but
that's
that-
a
You go
That's the
by
question.
eyewitness testimony.
But that's what I was trying to get at is, okay, so if you look at the claims that are being made, also if you look at them the way you would a court case, the way you would a crime scene, right? Think about it like a crime scene, because it says in the Bible, in the New Testament, after Jesus rose from the dead, he gave many more proofs. It uses the term proofs. Luke starts his gospel by saying, I've put together an orderly account. I've checked into, the evidence. I've investigated this story. The Gospels are an eyewitness account of the 3 years that Jesus did his ministry here on this earth. That's what they are. And if you can, so you approach it the way, a prosecutor does, right? Now, like on the other side, people tear it apart the way a defense attorney would. One of the things that they do is you have 50 things that prove Jesus was who he said he was, but one thing over here, that says he wasn't, so they fixate on this one thing. You also get to a point of how much evidence do you need, okay? Because how much evidence did you need to convince you that Julius Caesar was who he was? When is enough enough? You will never be able to prove anything without some sort of, there's always going to be something in the back of your mind, pick something. You're never going to have every single little detail, every single little fact.
To look at the evidence and form your conclusion.
And what standard of proof should we use? Well, the highest standard of proof that the most moral, not really anymore, but the most moral country, us, in the world uses for their own court system to determine whether or not to terminate someone's life is not beyond any doubt. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. Anything is possible. Everything's possible. But is it reasonable? And that's what you have to do. You have to look at the eyewitness testimony and do your comparisons. Look at the people that were actually, that had animosity towards Christianity are confirming what the eyewitness accounts say. And then you can go, well, what about this? Well, yeah, that's possible that could have happened that way, but is that reasonable? Based on all the evidence that we have here, based on, because this is all based on circumstantial evidence, right? We don't have any direct evidence. None of, all the witnesses are dead.
right.
So, yeah.
Do you believe in evolution?
No, not now. I believe in microevolution.
Right, but do you believe that we evolved from apes?
No.
So what do you believe? Intelligent design, or do you
No, I
believe we
believe
were
in
created?
I believe that we were created.
Okay.
I believe in I believe in the when I'm speaking, I'm not necessarily speaking for myself. I believe in the Bible, in the stories in the Bible, and it's a preponderance of the evidence as far as I'm concerned There's so many different levels of it. It's kind of like when you're talking
It's
about
more likely than not. That's what.
right.
Yeah.
You know, you just keep going, and you could say, like I think one of the comments you made was, well, people will throw out there, they'll throw out, well, why would a just God do this? You know, he'd go in there and why kill all man, women, children, animals? You know, when I told you to go kill that complete village, and you brought back the sheep.
Mm-hmm. That was
You know,
Saul.
no, I said everything, right?
Right.
Right.
He was displeased. So there's I believe in that kind of stuff, and there was a purpose for that. I don't know what the purpose was.
You can't
specifically.
always. I mean, it says in the Bible, we're not always going to know why.
No.
Do you remember the first time you wanted to? I don't know. You wanted to go spend the night at your buddy's house when you were a little boy, and your parents said no.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, why? And you're thinking, there's nothing wrong with my friend.
Yeah.
My parents know that that's a safe place for me to go. Why on earth would I not be able to go there? And they say, because I said so.
Right.
I mean, and maybe to this day you still don't know why you weren't allowed to spend the night at your one buddy's that one night. But your parents had a good reason. And, you know,
Sometimes
that's
it's
where
just a
we're
bad
at.
feeling.
Right.
Well, yeah, and I've said it myself. I've said the same thing to my kids, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Because they you don't have the time to explain it and you know, to make them understand all the issues. Sometimes you just have to listen to what I'm saying and do that.
And why don't you have the time to explain it?
Why?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Because you know too much. Because you know your intellect is so much bigger because you've been around for so much longer than they have. You have so many more life experiences.
And at a
that's
certain
God.
age, you know,
And
you
you
can
know-
give completely valid, logical reasons, and your kids will be like, "That's just stupid, Dad."
well, yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, hey, if you do this, there's a good chance, a probability that this next step would happen,
Right.
right? And that's what you're trying to explain. And well, that's not going to happen,
Right.
you know. So
Right. Right.
But yeah, I think, you know, when I'm looking at the Bible and all the different things, and you know, I'm going through and I'm reading all the different sections, and you know, you got the history, you've got the thing, a couple things that we talked about, you touched on already, is it was corrupted. Okay, it could be corrupted. So you're trying to find what's the real important part. It's kind of like when my mom.
But I don't believe that it was, because the Old Testament was protected by the Pharisees and the scribes.
Mm-hmm.
And,
I'm not saying it was.
and-
I'm not saying it was corrupted. I'm just trying to say.
Okay, well, I'm answering that.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, the Old Testament was protected by Jewish scholars, by the Pharisees and the scribes, and the New Testament you can authenticate back to, I believe, the first versions in Greek.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So back to within 100 years of the time of Christ.
363 was the Council of Laodicea. That's when everything that is in the word now got put in there, and that's when the agreement was made. Mm-hmm. The Council of Nicaea and all that's the Catholic Church. That's a whole nother show. Okay? But so really you have 363 years of question. Like, what could have happened in those 363 years? And I don't have time to go into it right now, but I can kind of
trust you.
Like walk you, you know, like really. I mean, if you have right here on the left hand, this is where Jesus, you know, rose, ascended into heaven, and you have 363 right here. What we need is everything to lean more towards my left than towards the right, because the further removed the Gospels were, you know, being written were from Jesus ascending into heaven, the more of a problem we have with reliability. But there's like one big starting point is we know for a fact, and no atheist in the world would argue this with you, that the Jewish temple was torn down in 70 AD. Okay? Paul was, in his letters to the Corinthians and the Philippians, he's talking about pain and suffering and going through hard times and being persecuted. Why would he not mention the destruction of their temple in any of his writings? Nothing about the destruction of the temple is in any of the Gospels. And Jesus in the Gospel predicted that the temple was going to be destroyed. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't then, if they were trying to
Why would they
scam.
not
Why wouldn't
say
they
more
say,
prophecy?
look, see, Jesus, that's another
Yeah.
prophecy fulfilled right there. So we have really
that's a
good
great
reason.
point.
Yeah, we have really good reason to believe that these Gospels were written. We could even start before 70 AD. So now we're 40 years. We've got 40 years right there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, if you really sit down and break it down and look at their styles of writing, who quotes who, this is fascinating to me. They think that the Gospel of Mark was the first one written, and here's why. If you read the Gospel of Mark, it reads like a Tom Clancy novel. If you read it straight through, it's very fast-paced. He uses a lot of language like immediately and soon after, and it's like it moves real fast. And you also notice he talks about certain people, but he never says their name. And in the other Gospels, we find out who these people are he's talking about. He's talking about Peter in one story. He doesn't say his name, but John uses Peter's name. He's talking about Mary in a story. He doesn't use her name. But okay, so why wouldn't he mention their names? And why would he write it so hastily? Could it be because he was trying to protect them? I mean, it was written like he was trying to protect some other eyewitnesses. So how close to Christ ascending into heaven must that? I got goosebumps right now.
Yeah.
How close to his death must that have been?
Right.
And one more thing, if they wanted to, taint it or add stuff or blah blah, take it away, why on earth would they make Mark and Luke 2 of the 4 writers of the Gospels when they weren't direct witnesses? Why wouldn't they have used? Why wasn't it Matthew, John, Peter, and Andrew? Well, that adds more credibility to it. We think that Mark is actually Peter's gospel. We think that Peter was Mark's protege. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
And
no, Mark was Peter's protege.
Yeah, Mark was Peter's protege, and he wrote, what he heard from Peter. Okay. But yeah, it's
those are excellent points, Kat.
It's crazy.
Those are excellent points.
And she's got all the notes and everything.
She's got good notes. I like it. I like it when Kat studies.
I guess last point that I wanted to get out was just that my mom sent me a link to her church where they had a Father's Day sermon. Okay, and the sermon was about David, and it was about when and I'm trying to remember. Was it David's one of his sons? Had sex with one of his sister or cousin.
There was a lot of that going on back
then.
there.
And
Are you sure it was David? Or was it Jacob?
It was one of David's sons.
Oh, okay.
One of David's sons did this and had to flee, and the other brother eventually killed him. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I had just read this several weeks ago.
Okay.
But the whole sermon was about, well, the what you get out of this story is that David didn't have a lot of time for his kids, so he should have spent more time with his kids. It's an uplifting thought, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's really what it was about.
Probably not. But
no, that's what the minister chose to.
Yeah, but you
right.
can still
And then
glean that lesson out of it.
Yeah, you can. Very good lessons, but I think it's when you go back to, the Bible and the lessons and all these different things, there's you really have to study it, know what it was about, and pick out what's the important things in there, because you might write. This is why you have all these different people writing and referencing, because the way I see it is different than the way you see it and the way you see it.
And all you can do is pray on it, listen to your heart, and find a group of people to discuss it with and come to a consensus opinion. There are some things that are absolute, and the rest of it's just kind of details, but it's all very interesting. And I
don't think we did a good job bashing it, though.
No, we didn't. We'll have to Bible bash
another day. We talked about some
day.
of the objections, but we didn't really go into.
Okay, well, we got happy hour up next. So this has been Down the Rabbit Hole. To God be the glory, great things he has done. We will see you next week.